So, after a very quick leadership campaign after the defeat of Peter Dutton, the Liberal Party of Australia has officially elected its new leader and the official leader of the opposition. And that new opposition leader is Susan Ley. This contest between Angus Taylor and Susan Ley was pretty interesting, and I think looking at the numbers of how Liberal members voted in this race is very telling, and I think that unfortunately internal party politics is going to overshadow how historic Susan Ley's victory actually is. Now, first of all, historic thing that I do have to mention, Susan Ley will be both the first female leader of the Liberal Party and the first female opposition leader in Australian history. Julia Gillard was Prime Minister, but she did so after Kevin Rudd was elected, and she replaced him, and then she was replaced herself by Rudd again. So Susan Ley is actually the first woman to ever be the leader of the opposition on a federal level in Australia, and I think that deserves some recognition. Now, this election between Susan Ley and her competitor Angus Taylor was an incredibly factional competition. They both represented their halves of the Liberal Party. Susan, the more moderate, and Angus, the more conservative branch. And I think what was most fascinating looking at the results from this party room vote is just how narrow the margin of victory actually was. The final count in the election came out to 29 for Susan and 25 for Angus. Incredibly close. If you think about it, if two individuals from Susan's side change their votes, this would be a deadlocked race. If three of them did, it would have gone the other way. So Susan has won, but not by a convincing margin. And what is even more concerning is when you look at specifically who voted for her. Now, we don't know who voted for who. It is a secret ballot in the Liberal Party room. But of course, MPs and senators are free to say to the media who they voted for if they so choose. And it seems that according to the ABC, 3 of the people that voted for Susan are Liberal senators whose terms are expiring in July of this year. So come July, that is not going to be a margin of 4. That is going to be a margin of 1. And believe it or not, it actually gets worse if you look at the MP that didn't vote in this election. Terry Young is the current MP for Longman, and he is a member of the hard right faction of the Liberal Party, but he chose not to vote in this election because his seat is still in doubt. Longman is looking like it's going to be incredibly close in this election, but he has been ahead for most of the count, and most people project that Longman is going to go the way of the Liberal Party. So if that is the case, and then Terry Young gets in, then this is not a margin of victory at all. Effectively, this is going to be a 26-26 split right down the middle. And if I am pointing this out as somebody just commenting on politics from my apartment, then I guarantee you that the members of the Liberal Party themselves, including Taylor, including Susan herself, are all very aware of how precarious her position could be. If there is even a single bump in the road and one of the MPs or senators that supports her thinks that Taylor or any right-wing challenger might be a better option, then she could be in serious trouble. And look, there is a part of me that can't help but feel bad for Susan in this situation because she has been given an impossible job, and a lot of people have said has been given a poison chalice. Because if we're speaking practically here, looking at all honest political outcomes, it is pretty much an impossibility that the Liberal Party, no matter what it does, is going to be able to win the next election. They are going to need to pick up more than 30 seats to beat Albo in 2028 or whenever the election is called between now and then. And that is just not something that has ever happened in Australian political history. And let's be honest, it's never easy being the first woman to do anything. Susan is going to have to come to terms with the fact that she won't only have to be the first female opposition leader, she's also aiming to be the first female opposition leader to then lead the opposition into government. And that is honestly just an extra level of pressure on what is already an incredibly difficult set of cards that she's been dealt. The challenges that lie ahead for Susan in this term are kind of ridiculous. I mean, first of all, she has to keep the party unified with the knowledge that the Conservative faction could, at any point really, once the final numbers come in, launch a leadership challenge if she makes so much as one step wrong. And then if she does get to the end of her 3-year term here as opposition leader without an internal challenge to her power, she then has to have one of the best comeback election results ever to even have a chance of holding on to power after the next election, probably around 2028. But say what you will, the Liberal Party at least has realised now, by a very, very narrow margin, that maybe moving even more to the right after a second monumental defeat isn't a good idea. The National Party seems to have done the same. David Littleproud was returned, so the other half of the coalition isn't going that crazy. Matt Canavan will not be the leader of the National Party, thankfully. And while discussing the Nationals, Jacinta Price, she seems to have switched to the Liberal Party at the moment for no particular reason. She, as we mentioned, was going to be Angus's running mate for the deputy position, but for the moment, it seems she's just in the Liberal Party for no particular purpose. But who knows? I suspect maybe a cabinet position may be thrown her way, but honestly, that is not saying much, considering there are about 30 cabinet positions, shadow cabinet positions rather, to fill. And let's be honest, with where the coalition is now, that's probably going to be most of them.